everyone, Professor August here, and I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Ooh, that bright light. It's the sun directly over my car, but we're getting on the highway and the lighting will fix itself. There we go. Do you guys like my fake Versace pin, Versace? $2, because I can't afford the $400 real one. Don't make that kind of money. All right, so I had a nice conversation with some of my students about imposter syndrome, and I wanted to touch on it here because I think it's important for students to know about, especially now that, like people are applying to four-year universities and graduate schools and all sorts of advanced stuff beyond community college, like my students. Applications were due a few months ago, and word started coming in that, who got into a four-year university. A few people got into Stanford, yay. A few people got into Berkeley and Davis, yay. And then a lot of people didn't get accepted to the places that they wanted to go to, so they got into the tax system, so they got into Santa Cruz, or they just decided to go to like Cal State East Bay or something like that, which is totally fine, but there was a lot of weird perspectives on it, and I think that was disheartening to see among some of my students, where rejections from their top universities made them feel like it was some sort of indictment of who they are as students. And so I had to sit down and have conversations with individual students, and then I had conversations with my classes. So I just sat down and talked to them about imposter syndrome and why it's useful to understand the feelings that they're having, but also to understand that once it starts, it pretty much never goes away. There are ways to cope with it, and I'll talk about the way I cope with it, but for the most part, once you feel it, it starts coming back over and over, and the older you get, the more it impacts you in a greater way, because if you're in high school or at a college, stakes are really low, but if you're about to become a mom and you feel like you're going to be a really bad mom, I was going to say a bad word. If you feel like you're going to be a bad mom or a bad dad, that's a really big thing, right? And I feel like a lot of parents feel like this. I have a lot of my friends have kids, and I can just see them struggling, feeling like they're bad parents. It's no, you're doing fine. But this idea of imposter syndrome affects us in so many different eras of our lives. Anyways, so yes, it's a real thing, imposter syndrome, that feeling of being inadequate because somebody has said something to you, or somebody has looked at you the wrong way, or raised an eyebrow when you were talking about your dreams or ambitions or a job that you have. So everybody feels it. So there are, as a fully grown adult, and this feeling doesn't go away. I have had imposter syndrome for the longest time, and it just has progressively gotten worse. But there are particular instances as an adult that stick out in my memory, and these are two instances related to this job that I have now. Could probably make an hour-long video about all of the instances, and I don't know, in college and graduate school, and being at a public speaker at a certain event, or being at a conference and somebody saying something. But these are two examples that happened really early on at my time in this particular job as a community college faculty member. The first one was the day of the interview, and I was really well prepared. Okay, I drove to campus. It was really hot that day. It was in February or March, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I wore an Argyle sweater from Express, so it was already hot. And then I got to campus, and HR was waiting for me. This was during COVID, so we had masks on. I had two masks on, so I had that fabric mask with an N95 on top of it, so I could barely breathe. It was hot. HR took me up to the president's office, but they asked if I was okay walking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, and I was like, that was a mistake. So I took the stairs, 3 flights, got to the president's office, and then for the entire interview, for the next hour, I could not catch my breath. In the room, it was the VP, the president, the dean, and a faculty member, and they were interviewing me. I thought I did a fine job, aside from the fact that I just couldn't breathe. And as I was being walked out, somebody said to me, I had already left the interview, somebody said to me, this was your first interview, wasn't it? And I was like, no, it wasn't. And he's like, oh, well, you'll do better next time. I was like, oh God. So I left the interview feeling like I wasn't going to get the job. And then a few hours later, they called me and gave me a job. And I was like, okay, well, that was like 6 hours of torture because I thought I bombed the interview. But that sort of like stuck with me because I just thought, okay, who, like that person who said that to me probably thought of the three candidates, I probably wasn't the best one. Uh, I don't know if that's the case or not. I've never asked this person. I'm never going to ask this person because I don't want to know. I have the job and the story. Fast forward a few months to the first week of me being on campus, and I was at a faculty luncheon type thing. And I was mid conversation with the our geography, one of our geography professors on campus, and this woman walks up to me and she says, "Are you August?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." She said, "Oh, we have a connection." And I was like, "Okay." I was like running through who this person could be. Like, I didn't recognize her face. I couldn't tell like if I'd known her or if I'd met her from in Chicago or Los Angeles, or Texas or Indiana or like some conference or something. And it turns out I'd never met her before, and I haven't met her since. But she said, "Yeah, you took my daughter's job." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I'm standing there. What are you supposed to say to that? Like, you're in conversation with a colleague, and somebody walks up to you and says, "You took my kid's job." And I'm like, "Oh God, all right." And I asked her who her kid is, and she talked about her daughter who just graduated with her PhD from some really prestigious university and who was supposed to move out here to California to take the job that I got, who apparently she had interviewed for this job. And she kept going on and on about how her daughter has this PhD. And shout out to Adam, who was the geography professor. He just like nudged me and he's like, August also has a PhD from a really elite university. And like he started talking me up and I was like, oh yeah, yeah. And like in that moment, I was so flabbergasted because I don't know what this lady was thinking. Like, I don't know if she was trying to be mean or if she just needed to get it off her chest or like she was upset that, whatever the rationale was, it just did not feel good in that moment. So the geography professor, he was just like, you're good, August. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I have the credentials, I have the degree, I have the work experience. So I don't know why in that moment, when somebody just said, like, this job was not meant for you, it, it bothered me. And periodically, that moment, like, I relive that moment over and over and over again because of this imposter syndrome. It never goes away. Like, this idea that you don't belong in a place where the position that you hold was not meant for you, or you got the position for some reason that was unstated to you. And so I've just over time had to, like, this is my solution, right? So some people journal, some people meditate, some people pray. I talk, I tell my students, like, whenever it pops up in my head, and it happens like once or twice a semester, where I'm just like, God damn, like, this is like something bad happened on campus, and I'm just reminded that this lady came up to me and said, "You took my kid's job." I'm like, okay. So my solution is just to talk to people and to tell my colleagues and to tell my friends and to tell my students and just like go outwards with it. Because this idea of pluralistic ignorance is really important. We all need to understand that pluralistic ignorance is a real thing. Um, you might be in a group of people and you might feel like you're the only conservative person, only to find out later that everybody in the group is conservative. Or you might be in a group of, I don't know, queer people, but you don't realize that everybody in your group is queer and you're the only queer person. And you're like misreading the situation. Pluralistic ignorance is this idea that like everybody is having the same idea as you, or everybody is having the same feeling as you, or everybody in the group has the same identity as you. But because nobody actually mentions it, you feel like you're the odd one out. And so after I tell my students about this, everyone's like, oh yes, I can see, like, as a first generation college student or as an immigrant in a college class, like, I'm not the only one. There are a bunch of people around me. I'm like, yeah, as an adult, like, as a human being trying to work and get through our lives, there will be instances like the ones that I went through where somebody will say something and it will just stick with you and haunt you and make you feel bad periodically, but you have to have a way of coping with it. Anyways, back to where this video started with the students who didn't get into the universities that they wanted to get into. Like, really, there are dozens of reasons why, as a 4.0 student, you wouldn't get into your university of choice. Maybe the department to which you're applying has too many applicants, or the application process, like the people who were on the committee were looking for very specific things because they had such a huge pool to choose from. And so if there's 1,000 people applying for 10 spots, You not getting in with a 4.0 GPA and a bunch of extracurriculars doesn't mean you're a bad student. It just means that that university in that cycle didn't have space for you. And sometimes it comes down to like they have 50 really good applications and they just pick the top 10. They like the 10 that are on the top of the pile. They're like, yes to these, and the rest have to reapply, or they get waitlisted and they have to wait their turn. Like, you don't know what the rationale is for why you didn't get in. You can inquire, you're probably not going to get an answer, but it's not about, like, chances are it's not about you as a student. Chances are that there was something else in the admissions committee, some conversations that were happening, or you might have said, like, in your application, I want to work with so-and-so as a faculty member, and that professor in the last like 5 years has taken on so many students that they just don't have the capacity to take on more students. And so the admissions committee knows this, and they say, this student is not going to do well here because they're not going to have that mentorship that they're looking for. And so they'll reject you so they can take somebody else for some other faculty member. Again, it's not an indictment of you. And I know it's going to like sit with you as a person for a long time. This is not a defining moment. It's not a thing that's going to like, it shouldn't haunt you forever and ever. Talk about it with your friends, because a lot of other people are feeling the same way. Talk to your faculty members, talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, because everybody has had some sort of instance of imposter syndrome where like something terrible has happened and it just sits with them and it makes them feel bad. Anyways, okay, time for me to pull into this parking lot and have a lunch meeting with some colleagues. I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.
Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Catch you in the next video.